given our current conditions, we want to make sure our families, staff, and students know what we're doing to keep our campuses as safe as possible. And we also know you probably have a lot of questions about our virtual learning program, so we wanted to provide this opportunity to address those. Joining us tonight, we have members of our district leadership team, including our superintendent, Dr. Hafed Aziez, our senior chief of schools and innovations, Dr. Daniel Presley, our chief of teaching and learning, Mandy Estes, our executive director of teaching and learning, Ryan Smith, director of health services, Brandy Hafner, our director of professional development, Edie Benz. Edie is also playing a big role in the virtual learning program, so thanks for joining us tonight. And then Sharon Wilkes, our area academic director for our Round Rock learning community. But this past year, Sharon's also taken on the duty of being our COVID coordinator. And so she's going to be answering questions once we get to the point that we're doing them in the Q&A. She'll be typing in some answers so that we can get to as many questions as possible, because we know we have a lot of folks tuning in tonight. So again, welcome and thank you. We're also joined tonight by two ASL interpreters who will be switching off. So feel free to pin them to your screen if you need that service. After this short presentation, we'll take those questions. They're going to be submitted through the Q&A function. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen. And we'll also be posing some questions that we received from folks in advance. So, and also a video of this town hall is going to be available on our website with English and Spanish subtitles later this week. So first of all, I want to turn it over to Dr. Aziez to welcome everyone, and then we're going to get started with our presentation.
Thank you so much for having me here today, this evening. And I want to thank our parents really for taking the time. I know this is a very, critical time, and as we all are planning for the fall semester and the new school year. I want our parents to know that we're really working very hard to adjust. These things are changing sometimes from one day to another, week to another. And so our team is really working and listening to our community, and also listening to what CDC and other health officials, local health officials are saying. And then within whatever we can do, we're trying to make things better and more safe for our students, because we understand that our parents, you send your child to us and you want to make sure that they're safe, right? So we want to make sure again that we're doing our best to provide safe environment, but also the best learning environment for them, right? So again, I want to thank the team. I want to thank our board of trustees for their support, because we are actually one of the very few school districts in the state of Texas who are actually offering virtual learning, and so we are thankful to the support. But we feel again that we are responding to our community parents' requests. We're trying to work within those limitations that were set forward. As you know, we're not getting any funding for virtual this year. There are things that we cannot require, including mandating mask wearing. So we have to work within those limitations and try to accommodate, as I said, our parents, our students as much as possible, to ensure that our students are safe and our staff are safe. So again, thank you, our parents, for your support. Thank you for really joining us this afternoon. And we have a lot to share with you. And I know you have a lot of questions that you can ask us. I wanted to know that we have a lot of answers. We're still working. This is work in progress. But I want to assure you that based on some of the feedback and the question that you provided us today, we may be able to tweak a few things, right? Again, please keep in mind that we have some limitation, and we're trying to do the best we can with wherever is given to us as far as guidelines and requirements, I guess, coming from the state and also from the Texas Education Agency. So again, thank you, and I don't want to take too much time. I think Janie will take it back, right? I think, and we start the presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'm going to hand it right over to Brandy Hafner, our Director of Health Services, who will talk about some of our protocols.
Yes, good evening. I'm happy to have this chance to go over some of our safety protocols that we'll have in place when school starts. These are really high-level overviews on each of our COVID protocols, but I wanted to encourage parents to find a much more complete listing of our protocols on the Round Rock ISD website. It's available 24 hours a day. If updates to the protocols occur, which we do anticipate that happening, these things have been changing. It's very similar to last year. We're getting updates from different agencies every day. The website will be updated to reflect these changes. If we can go to the first slide. Great. We will continue to ask our students and staff to conduct a COVID self-screening before they come to school every day. This is just kind of an overview of our arrivals procedures. Our buses will operate at full capacity as we'll have more students coming to campus. There'll be seating charts on the buses to assist with contact tracing as needed. In the mornings, we're asking families to bring their students to school as close to the beginning of the school day as possible. We're really trying to avoid an accumulation of kiddos on the porches at the campuses. When possible, campuses will utilize separate entrances for car riders versus bus riders to decrease that congestion upon entering. For our dismissals, some of those same considerations will be in place. Campuses will designate staggered dismissal groups and separate exits when it's possible. Parents of elementary and middle school students will be encouraged to call campuses ahead of time when picking up their student early to accommodate for the extra time needed to get the kiddo to the family safely. Next slide. All of our breakfast and lunch will be served in the cafeterias this year, except for any campuses that were used to eating in the breakfast in the classrooms pre-pandemic. So students will follow social distancing as much as allowed by the space during each lunch period. Of course, that will be different from campus to campus. In our campus hallways, movement patterns will vary by campus, but our administrative teams take great care on figuring out how best to move the traffic in their different setups. Classroom furniture will be spaced out as much as possible, and parents can request a desk shield if needed. Each classroom will have hand sanitizer available, and high-touch surfaces will be disinfected daily. We will encourage students to bring water bottles from home as much as possible. Next slide, please. All right, to talk a little bit more about cleaning, the district will follow the CDC guidance for cleaning classrooms and buses. All of our disinfectants used by Round Rock ISD meet the EPA's criteria for use against the virus that causes COVID-19. If there's a symptomatic student or a positive individual that's been in the room, cleaning will take place more immediately than the after-school cleaning that will happen in the rest of the building. Round Rock ISD modified our HVAC systems last year to introduce more outside air into the buildings, and all the HVAC systems are equipped with improved filtration to reduce the spread of airborne illnesses. Our next slide. Okay, as far as athletics and fine arts programs, we will follow the protocols set by UIL. You can hear the Round Rock drums, Go Rock drums, are practicing right outside my window. We will expect parents and students to notify the coach, director, or trainer of any health concerns in a timely manner, so the safety of the other students can be taken into consideration. Booster club meetings should be held virtually or after school to minimize outside exposure to our students that are on campus. Performances, exhibits, games, all of those may be adjusted based on the health conditions and safety guidelines from UIL, TEA, local health authorities. These adjustments could affect transportation procedures or the number of people permitted to be spectators. So we're just going to have to wait and see as we go forward. Now let's talk a little bit more about what happens when somebody's sick. If you can move to the next slide. All right, for symptomatic students and staff, should stay home and refer to their healthcare provider for testing and care, whether they're vaccinated or not. If you're vaccinated and you're still showing symptoms, those still need to be taken into consideration. This refers, we're talking about staying home for symptoms that students have that are not normal for them. So we're not talking about headaches and someone that has a diagnosis of migraines. We're not talking about allergy symptoms with someone that we know that has a diagnosis of seasonal allergies. We're talking about the list of symptoms on the COVID checklist that are presenting to the individual that in a way that's not normal for them. So if a student or staff member has those symptoms, they should stay home until they're feeling better, but they need to make sure they're fever-free for 24 hours without medication before returning. For students and staff that have tested positive or a probable case. So again, a probable case is someone that has COVID symptoms and are a close contact to someone who's positive. Those individuals must isolate at home for 10 days from the beginning of their symptom onset and make sure they're fever-free for 24 hours without medication before coming back. All positive and probable cases will be reported to the health department, and the close contacts will be identified and notified. So we still have our reporting tool available for families to use on the Round Rock ISD website. It seemed really helpful for a lot of families last year, and it seemed like a great way for us to gather that information. As far as notification, families will receive emails regarding positive cases on the campus with the close contacts in the class or on the team or on the bus, wherever that close contact might occur during the day, also being notified. This notification could come via email or a call or a letter home. It'll really depend on the campus and how they most effectively communicate with their families. All right, let's talk about close contacts. I said earlier that we were going to be identifying the close contacts and notifying them. Remember, a close contact is someone who was within 6 feet for 15 minutes for over a 24-hour period. So health officials strongly advise close contacts to quarantine, and we will pass along the specific information to families when they're notified. Note also how, anyone that's identified as a close contact that is fully vaccinated or who's had COVID in the last 3 months is not recommended. They're not recommended to quarantine. Those folks have a pass on that. Our next slide talks about masks. Health officials, including the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics, came out with a strong statement last week, say that one of our most powerful tools for combating the spread of COVID-19 is masking when you're around other people that aren't in your household. Round Rock ISD will strongly encourage our students and staff to wear masks, but we cannot require it. The same thing goes with vaccines. Health officials agree that vaccines are one of our most powerful tools to stay safe against COVID-19. We can strongly encourage our staff and our students to get vaccinated, but we cannot require it. While the vaccine has only been available for staff and our students over age 12, the latest word is that that would be available for our younger students late winter or early spring. Of course, we will continue to share information about that as it comes out. We had several COVID vaccine clinics this summer, and we're able to vaccinate, thousands of students and staff and community members, and we will continue to hold those vaccine clinics. We will have another one to be announced soon, and we will continue to hold those as long as the need is there. Lastly, on this slide, visitors will be limited on elementary and middle school campuses to only those that are deemed essential. To see the complete list of who's deemed essential, you can look on the Round Rock ISD website, very similar to what was last year. We're trying to limit the outside spread of COVID to our students at those campuses who've not had the ability to choose vaccination yet. At this time, I will hand the presentation over to Mandy Estes, our Chief of Teaching and Learning.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It looks like we have about 622 participants, and we are so grateful that you gave us a part of your evening. And it is our goal to answer as many of your questions as we possibly can. And for those questions that we don't yet have answers on, we are definitely will be working on those and likely are already working on those. So thanks again for joining us. A little bit about our virtual learning. It will be available, of course, this fall. It is for kinder through 6th grade students. We'll follow the typical schedule of Monday through Friday with the start and end times commensurate to what is offered on our campuses, our elementary and middle school campuses for 6th grade. District teachers will provide the instruction. It will include a blend of both synchronous and asynchronous. Important to note that unlike last year, where our teachers in the buildings were teaching both in-person learners and virtual learners simultaneously, which is, as I'm sure all of you know, a very challenging task. This year, it will be a separate program, separate from those who are attending in-person courses. That said, the experience our kids have and the curriculum in which they engage will follow our district scope and sequence. For this program, we will, of course, provide all the required courses and services. If your child has received special education supports or dual language, talented and gifted, et cetera, all of those supports will be provided for students. However, they will be in a virtual environment and may look a little bit different. We will not be providing extracurricular activities as a part of this, and we will have food service at some central locations. And you'll note here at the bottom of this screen, this slide, if you can see the slide, the transfer form will remain open until August the 9th at 11:59 p.m. And so if you are on the fence and still trying to decide what the best option for your student is, you will need to make that decision by August the 9th at 11:59 p.m. I want to also tell you, we do believe our best educational environment is in person. That said, we also recognize that our parents have safety concerns and that the situation with the pandemic is fluid. And so we want to honor our parents. We know that you know your situation and your student best. And so we know that you have choices to make, and we're happy to be able to provide this choice to you. And next slide. I think with that, I will turn it back over to Jenny Lacoste-Caputo to moderate our questions. So Jenny, take it away.
Thanks so much, Mandy. And we did just learn, I believe our Zoom webinar participants have been able to see the slide presentation, but those of you watching on the live stream, for some reason, we're not seeing that. So we apologize. Just know that the information on the slides, we're really summarizing our protocols that are already on our district website. And we will have a video of this. We're recording our webinar. So we'll have a video that does show the presentation, but Ms. Hafner and Ms. Estes did a great job of summarizing and going over that. So just want to remind everyone to please use the Q&A function if you have a question. Sharon has already been busy and answering questions directly to folks who are asking them, but we're going to obviously spend our time talking about it here now as well. One question that we received in advance, and Brandy did touch on this, but I think Dr. Presley or Dr. Azaiz might want to weigh in. What protections and support will be given to students that choose to wear masks for their own personal health?
Well, I want to remind everyone it's against the law for anybody in our district to require anyone to put a mask on school property. So, but anyone can wear a mask. So when you ask about protections, our principals are working to the extent possible to distance kids, to separate kids. And as we said over and over again, if we have the opportunity to create classrooms of kids who wear masks and kids who don't, or even within a classroom, groups of kids who wear masks and those who don't, our principals are working on that. It's a challenging situation. And talking to the principals today, I'll tell you, for example, if we have a classroom of students who the parents want them to wear masks, they want to wear masks, and they're grouped in a classroom together. If a student at any one time or a family decides they don't want to wear a mask anymore, we do not have the ability as a campus to tell a student, put your mask on, you're in a mask classroom. That is against the law. So our principals are working really hard to try to accommodate families with, if you want a plexiglass shield, and anybody can wear a mask at any time, but we will never ask a student or a staff member to put a mask on. So in social distancing, I mean, just common sense to the extent possible we will do, but we do have lunches and specials and all the things that happen in elementary school and with sixth grade and middle school that we can't guarantee you'll be in a mask environment all day. I don't know if that gets to the question, Jenny, but that's my best shot.
Yeah, we did have several questions specifically about potential opt-in, and of course that one I think is students who want to wear a mask to make sure that they aren't teased by others or told they don't have to.
If I may add, obviously, I truly believe that our principals will do everything within their extent possible, I guess, to accommodate our students and our parents' request. Obviously, it may vary from one campus to another. You may have a situation where maybe in the entire first grade group, right, only like maybe 5 or 6 students who want to wear masks. So it would be very hard for us to create or assign a teacher for only 5 or 6 students. We're hoping that maybe that number would be bigger, where we can be more like a reasonable class size, because again, we try to accommodate as much as we can, but we also, there are some constraints, I'm sorry, that may or may not allow us to make it happen. But rest assured that our principals and our staff are really going to do everything in their power to accommodate, again, to the extent possible. And again, it may vary from one grade level to another, or sometimes from one campus to another, depending on how many students wanted to do that, how many of our parents want to do that. And so, but we all want to again, that our students are feeling comfortable now, at school, safe at school, but also we want to make sure our parents are sending their best to us, right? That they feel also comfortable about having their students with us, right? But I mean, again, we ask for some flexibility as we are trying to kind of like assess all this and trying to do the best we can. Dr. Presley was talking about plexiglass. Plexiglass also are very helpful. We have plenty of plexiglass, so we can also accommodate and try to create another barrier, I guess, to protect our students. If that's our parents would like to have that, or they want us to use that we would be more than happy also to make that accommodation. And so it may vary, and I want to tell our parents it may vary just depending on the campus and sometimes even the grade level. But we're going to try to do the best possible to accommodate this request. We don't know. I mean, things may change. I know the state next to us, the governor just announced that they were mandating masks, right, in Louisiana. So we don't know if that might change next week, the week after. Obviously, our governor has the authority to make those changes. And I will encourage our parents, if you feel that's something that it's important, then also to advocate to the governor, advocate to the state level to allow us to have these kind of flexibility, because that will really, I think, make a lot of folks. But again, it's going to be up to the governor if they want to change course or not. At this moment, we cannot mandate masks. We can, and this is based on CDC guidelines. So we can encourage and highly encourage the use of them, but we cannot tell a kid, hey, why aren't you wearing your mask, right? Or why don't you put your mask on, right? We cannot do those kind of things. It's end of the day, it would be up to the parents to make those decisions, and obviously we have to respect that, whether they want to have a mask or not.
We were talking about specific grade level concerns, and we've had several questions about middle school COVID protocols for 6th graders, since we know that most 6th graders would not be old enough to have received vaccination. I think that's another sort of school operational question. Maybe either Dr. Presley or Brandy might want to talk a little bit about how principals are going to navigate that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jenny, say that again.
Concern about, are there specific protocols for 6th graders in middle school, since we know that most 6th graders would not be old enough, but the 7th and 8th graders would, to receive the vaccine?
No, not on campus. 6th graders who return to campus will be the same as our 7th and 8th graders. That's why we extended the virtual option to 6th grade. So if folks are uncomfortable, if they feel like they need to go virtual for this first semester, which is what we're offering, that 6th graders can take us up on that. And we'll make sure we staff that and have teachers available for them. But 6th graders who show up on campus, the protocols will be the same, as safe as possible by the middle school principals, to make sure our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are all accommodated as best they can with plexiglass, or, if they want to wear a mask. But there's no assurance that we can have 6th grade classes that are masked and unmasked, as I spoke earlier. So that's why we extended the offering of virtual learning to 6th grade, because we know many of our 6th graders are not eligible for a vaccine until they become available for younger kids.
We've also had several questions about that K through 6 parameter. This one parent says, I'm concerned about not having a virtual option for the upper grades. I can see a lot of quarantine happening and high school students falling behind. Can we speak a little bit of how we made that decision of which grades to offer virtual for? Dr. Aziez, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So we had a really a very robust conversation with the team about should we extend it to pre-K 4 really, and we actually have for pre-K 3, and based on the research and everything that we talked about it, like having virtual at the 4 years old, I think may not provide the benefit that desired benefit, I guess, right? And again, I let Mandy. Ms. Estes talk more about it, but it's more about the pre-K 4 and 3. They spend a lot of time working on social skills, a lot of time on moral skills, and where they have to do a lot of hands-on and they have to interact with each other. And it could be done at the virtual level, but it's not going to be ideal. It's not going to be the same benefit. And we wanted to make sure, especially because we want to give our pre-Kers a head start, we felt that would be the best option for them to be on site where they can actually interact with their classmates and also with their teacher. And I don't know if Ms. Estes, if you want to, Mandy, if you want to add some more to what I've said.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And totally agree. When you're talking about both ends of the continuum, both the secondary students that were referenced in the question, as well as pre-Kers, we know that our 4-year-old students really do not have the benefit that our older students do from a virtual environment. And so while we would, perhaps our community and all of us would love to say it's a pre-K 12 offering, we do have to look at the constraints that we have within our system. For secondary students, as far as capping or stopping the enrollment at 6th grade, the driving factor for that and working all of us together as a team was that students who are 12 and older are eligible for the vaccine. And so in trying to decide where to target our resources, where to target a virtual option within the constraints that we have, the continuum of kindergarten through 6th grade was selected.
Thanks, Mandy. You did double duty there. Dr. Ozzie has jumped ahead to another frequent question, which is why not pre-K, but that question was actually why not upper grade. So we took care of both of that. And just so our listening audience is clear, last year, TEA did fund Texas public school districts for students who attended school virtually. Traditionally and normally, we're funded on students who actually show up on our campus. We are reverting back to that, and there is no mechanism to fund students, and that the state funding is what allows us to pay our teachers and meet all of our expenses. And so the number of students in virtual, those are students that we actually are not funded for. And so this is a situation of looking at our fund balance or other sources in the budget to do that. So that's why those constraints are there. I know Dr. Presley touched a bit on the opt-in math classes, but we probably have more questions about that than anything else. So I was wondering, especially, we have a lot of former principals on this panel. If y'all could just talk a little bit about why that might look different campus to campus. And it sounds, and I'm a parent and I'm not an educator, I'm a communications professional. It sounds like it should be easy, but as I listen to you all talk about what it's like to build a schedule and all the considerations that come into putting a class together, can you just talk a little bit about all those considerations and why it does make it very challenging?
I can jump in and give that one a try as a former elementary principal. And Edie Benz also on the call. She's a former elementary principal. So in elementary schools, you may have across your first grade team, for example, perhaps 5 teachers to serve the 100 kids that are in first grade, just as an example. Within that first grade student group, you will have students who are English language learners. Many of our campuses also offer a dual language program. You will have students who are gifted and talented, and you will have students who receive 504 accommodations or special education supports, and perhaps some other programs that I'm not mentioning here. And so when a principal makes a master schedule at elementary level, they are matching the teacher's credentials and training to the groups of students that are to be served. And so, for example, you may have one teacher across that team of 5 in which students who receive special education support and accommodations are placed in 1 or 2 classrooms because we have other educators, special educators who go in and support those students. You may have one classroom that is a dual language classroom where that teacher holds a very special certification and teaches in both English and Spanish. You may have another classroom or 2 classrooms perhaps in which your gifted students are placed, and that teacher also has completed gifted training in order to be able to serve the students that are in that classroom. And you may have classrooms where you have students who are pulled out for different periods of the day to receive dyslexia supports, intervention supports, counseling supports, et cetera. And so when you only have perhaps 5 teachers to spread, or 6 or 8, however many it is, to spread students across, you can see how when you add in that now some of your dual language students who receive instruction in English and Spanish, for example, perhaps you have 2 or 3 who want in a mass classroom. We don't have the staffing capacity without adding teachers and teachers and teachers in order to create those classrooms. So just as Dr. Azaiz said and Dr. Presley said, we may have some pockets where it is possible, depending on the number of students whose parents would like them to be in a completely mass classroom, to start out that way. That said, if on the 3rd or 4th week of the school year, perhaps a parent says, I'm okay with my student no longer wearing a mask, we as a district staff, in line with the governor's orders, can no longer force that student to wear a mask, then you're dealing with a teacher change for that student as well. So it does become very complex. It is absolutely something that our principals would love to do. As a former principal, and certainly any others on the call that disagree or there's some other information, please chime in. But as a former principal at a dual language campus that also served quite a number of students with accommodations or with IEP goals, I can quickly imagine how difficult that would be to create those separate classrooms.
I'll add to that, as we have made the virtual option available to everyone. The latest thing I looked at, which hasn't been very long ago, we have some elementary schools where 5 students have chosen to go virtual. And we have a campus that has almost 250 kids going virtual. So it's a day-to-day changing situation for our principals and their staffing. I know our principals, traditionally, their teachers do welcome walks. They've long behind us now assigned class rosters. And I know how students, especially in elementary school, fall in love with their teachers very early on. So we want to try to keep from changing teachers, like you met your teacher, you love her, she's amazing. And then, a few weeks in, we have to juggle. But that's what we've learned to do over the last 18 months is to juggle and be flexible. And that's why we have the virtual option available. So for all the things, and I've not been an elementary principal before, I've been a principal, but not in elementary school. So I appreciate Ms. Estes' comments. And if anybody wants to add anything else, go ahead.
I think I'll jump to the next question. For the students who passed the AAPL in 5th grade and selected the dual language program they were afforded, are they going to retain that spot even if they use the virtual option until vaccines are released? Brian or Mandy or Edie, any?
So I think that's we'll have to look at that. Can you read the end of that question again? So it's the Apple test, 5th grade going into 6th.
Right. Will they be able to retain that spot even if they use virtual option? So I guess the question could be, will they still be offered dual language? And if not, will they retain their spot once they go back to in person?
So we do offer a bridge course for students who are already highly proficient, who are exiting from 5th to 6th, our dual language classrooms. However, in this virtual option, What we are going into this with, assuring our community that we can offer is fine arts and PE as those electives at 6th grade. And I recognize that will probably be a disappointing answer for our parents. And certainly that could be one of those things that we do find a way to adjust and to provide in the future. However, right now with staffing constraints and with a fairly small number of 6th graders having signed up, we need to offer those core courses, and we know that we can offer those and staff for those. So that's, we have gotten some other questions, I think, Jenny, about offering other language electives at 6th grade. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw one come in about French. And right now, we would not be able to efficiently use our staff to offer 1 or 2 or 3 or a handful of kids French in this virtual program. However, that said, again, Dr. Aziz emphasized this at the beginning of this session. We're going to be looking at the students who have signed up, and where we can make adjustments, we'll make adjustments. But right now, we're not to the point where we can commit that to our families.
We've also received several questions about the transfer process, and if those that have looked at this virtual option realize they actually fill out a transfer form. So they're transferring from their home school into this program, and then they'll return. For folks that already were transfer students, the concern is that they transfer then to virtual learning program, will they be able to go back to the school where they had transferred to, or do they have to go back to their zone school?
Yeah, I can jump in on that because we've been talking about that today. So students who are already on a transfer and then they decide to go virtual, when they go back, they'll go back to that school that they had transferred to. For the if it's an approved transfer for this year and they go back this year, they would go back to that school. So transfer is a yearly decision. So as long as it's within this year, then that's what will happen.
Great. So they're already, that school that they've already been assigned to, that's their school for the year. They go, they can come back. And I'll just add in a plug. I know our principals really want to make sure they maintain that communication with those families. And so there's an option to make sure you're still signed up for your home campus newsletters and to still stay involved. And that's very important. One parent pointed out, it's very accurate. We do talk a lot about when possible, if possible, in our COVID guidelines. She said, this is what's concerning to me. We will utilize separate entrances when possible. Social distancing will be done in the cafeteria if space permits. How do we know if you'll be doing social distancing if we only say if possible? We want to talk through some of the challenges of making that a hard and fast rule given space limitations. Dr. Aziz, do you want to handle that one? You're muted, sir.
Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. So the question reads, this is what is concerning to me. And she's quoting from our guidelines. We will utilize separate entrances when possible, in quotes. Social distancing will be done in the cafeteria if space permits. How do we know if you'll be doing social distancing, et cetera, when you only say if possible or if space permits? So it's the qualifiers that are concerned.
Yeah. And then that's what we discussed, right? Because every campus is different, from the physical, the architecture of the building to the number of students who are at that campus, right? I mean, so our principals, will work based on within those constraints to try to figure out the best possible way to adjust. So it would be easier if you have a campus with only 700 students, for example, the same size as a campus, maybe with 900 or 1,000 students. So the movement of the students and the way they have to go to the cafeteria and so on and so forth will be different, simply because you have a different variables, right? And so that's why we cannot have one cookie cutter approach, like this is how it's going to be done across the district, because we cannot say that simply because every campus is different, from the architecture, the way it's set up, if the building, to how many students are there, right? To how many, classes we're offering, because it may vary also from a middle school to a high school, right? And so those variables, that's why we are allowing our principals to really come up with the plan that best fit, the condition of the variables that are existing in his or her campus, right? So that's why we cannot say, so the best we can, our principals would do that. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ryan, Mandy, or Edie, I think any of you guys might be able to jump in on this one. Given that there's no funding for the virtual learning, will the virtual learning format be similar to last year's or different? If different, in what ways?
I can start that one off, and then Ryan and Edie, please jump in as well. So I think one of the key differences is that notion of teachers teaching students in two different learning environments. So it will be different in that way. This virtual option will be tailored only for virtual learners and not for some learners in the classroom and some who are there in person. Another difference that we anticipate, and again, this is an item that we'll be working through, is the virtual classes will likely be larger than the in-person classes, and that goes to staffing and so forth. We do, as of right now, have almost 2,000 virtual learners signed up. And so as we move staff into these positions, we do anticipate the virtual classes will be a bit larger. We think we can still provide a quality educational experience in that environment by using a blend of synchronous and asynchronous instruction, meaning that a teacher may work with the whole class at some points, and then we'll pull small groups during the day based on the needs of the students that they are assigned. And so a student's touch time with a teacher in the virtual environment may look different based on the student's needs and ability to work independently or need for more support virtually. Brian or Edie, anything else to add to that?
I think you hit most of the high points. I wanted to clarify real quick because I saw in the Q&A, we know we have some kindergarten parents who weren't with us last year, so that those words we're using, asynchronous and synchronous, became pretty routine for those of us who had students in school last year. But when we talk about synchronous, we mean essentially live teaching happening through the computer. So picture probably either your kindergartner sitting there or you sitting there with your kindergartner, depending on your home situation. And then for a couple chunks of time throughout the day, interacting with their teacher and the other students that are in that class. So then the asynchronous time would be when they are working on activities on their own, maybe taking breaks, doing different types of projects that our teachers have put together for them to do. So I just wanted to clarify those two terms. But for those of you who did have students learning virtually last year, I'd say that the experience that they're going to have at home will look relatively similar. But I think we have made some improvement based on feedback, that we got from families and from teachers and from students last year.
Edie, she was about to say something.
Anything to add in?
Okay, great. Let's see. It's going to return to one of our questions submitted in advance. Ms. Hafner, this might be a good one for you. What is the protocol to return to school after exposure to COVID? What about kids who have allergies or other symptoms? Will they be tested before returning? And I know we covered a little bit of this in the presentation, but do you want to just kind of hit on just a little bit more?
Sure. So if a student has symptoms to return back at this time, based on what the CDC has out, you would just have to feel better and be fever-free for 24 hours without a fever-reducing medication before you could come back. There's not a requirement to stay out for the 10 days like there was last year. We'll see if that changes. As far as testing goes to return, last year that was one of the conditions that you could meet to return if you had symptoms that were COVID related. And we as a district are working to provide COVID testing 5 days a week. It will probably be available over at the McNeil Performing Arts Center in the parking lot there, like it was last year. Last year we had it 2 days a week. This year we're working to provide it 5 days a week. More information will be shared with you in the public as soon as that becomes more set in stone. But that testing capability should be available for any families or staff members that need it. Is there another part of that question I didn't answer, Jenny? Someone said something about allergies, but I think we talked about that earlier, just in case anyone just joined us. The COVID daily screening that is required for students and staff before they come to school is looking for symptoms that are not normal to you. So if it's normal for you to have allergies, then that is not something that we're worried about. Of course, allergies are the hot button symptom. That you can go. There's two camps on that. There's lots of people who who don't want us to exclude kiddos that have allergies. But the hard part is, and the reality that a lot of our schools saw last year, is that's the biggest symptom of kiddos that test positive are allergies, a little runny nose, and a little gentle cough. So, which develops into something, more of a cough later for some kids. But those little minor symptoms, while it was annoying to some families to go home with those symptoms, it was the positive. It was the key to finding out someone was positive for other families. So it's a very gentle rope to walk. And I really appreciate the kindness that is shown to the school nurses in this offices around our district, because these nurses are put in a very difficult situation. They're trying their best to follow the guidance and keep kiddos away that are possibly contagious, but also try to use some reasoning. So anyway, some kindness towards those folks is much appreciated.
We've had some questions about electives for sixth graders. So here is one that I think if we address this might answer more questions. How are beginning band orchestra students for virtual students? How will they catch up to their in-person peers? As has been stated, they will not have any lessons or classes. Missing months of instruction completely is not fair to the virtual student.
Well, I think I can start that and then kick to Ryan. I think the answer is it depends. And I mean that it depends on how long they are in virtual, because it definitely at some point will require some catch up. Some of the students we know in beginning band may have already had some private lessons or have some level of proficiency on their instruments before they even enter sixth grade. And so I think we're going to have to look at the timing of how long they're in virtual. I'm very, very confident, though. I know our band directors are very passionate about band. They do not want to lose any kiddos to that opportunity. And so I'm quite sure that they're going to work really hard to help the students who opt for virtual catch up very quickly.
I would just add that we're actually meeting with them earlier this week. We talked about this. We know it's coming. There's going to be students that aren't starting at the same point. And all I can say is, like Mandy said, it is individual. Obviously, the sooner the students are no longer in virtual, the quicker they'll be caught up and ready to go.
Next question, another one about virtual. For virtual classes, will you try to group kids from the same elementary school in classes together? That way kids are more likely to know others in their virtual class.
Yeah, well, I'd say we're going to get all the numbers, and we're going to essentially schedule based on that. So we're definitely not guaranteeing, unfortunately, that students will be in the same class with their peers from their campus. So it's really going to depend on students from all around the district are probably going to be in classes together, just to be honest about that. I definitely don't want to set the expectation that students from a single class will be in class together. It's probably more likely that they'll be in class with some students from a variety of campuses around the district.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, again, while I know that may worry some parents, what I know from my career is kids are very resilient. And I think this could be a nice opportunity for students to meet some students outside of their school that they haven't had the opportunity to know before. And so, while that may be a concern, I also see an opportunity in that situation as well.
This question is probably both for Ms. Hafner and for Dr. Presley, because one is sort of asking advice on, when do we keep our kids home? And then one is about how absences are counted. So should we always keep our kids home in the case of a cold, fever, cough, congestion? I think that's for Brandy. The second part, how will absences be counted if we pull our kids out and it's not COVID? So Brandy, you want to talk about when do you keep a kid home? I think you're muted still.
Sure. Am I muted? I think, can you hear me? Okay. If your student had fever, you would always keep your kid at home, just like you did before. Fever is one of the key symptoms of communicable diseases. So we want to make sure that we're following, good sense like we did before COVID was part of our daily lives. When you're talking about colds and those kind of things, you know, while we can't require those students stay home that have those symptoms, it would be strongly encouraged to stay home while you're having, you know, severe enough symptoms that it's noticeable by the kid and the classmates, and it's bothering the kiddo while they're at school. But at this time, we cannot require that those kiddos stay home.
And the second part, Jenny, you know, it's we've all gone through a pandemic for a number of months now. I could almost say years, but it's something nobody expected. But as far as work, I mean, as far as schoolwork, we are asking everybody to be sensible about their approach to that. We will provide assignments and things for students who are out so they can get their work done, just as they may have done pre-pandemic if they had a bad case of the flu or some other. And I totally understand the the pandemic. The virus is much more complicated than the flu, but we will, our campuses will work to provide work for kids that need to stay home. And what we're telling everybody to do is just make sensible decisions and be safe. If you think you're sick or you are sick, stay home. Don't come back regardless of what you think you may have. And we'll continue to provide lessons and assignments and things like that for students who need to stay home because they're sick. We never want a student to come to school with fever, you know, or any other illness that they think may be contagious or communicable. And so we'll do everything we can to make sure students are served with assignments and work that they need while they're at home.
And just to reiterate, if a student's feeling ill, no matter what it is, that's an excused absence, correct? With a parent note.
Yes, and that's been the case for many, many years. So that's
Right.
not changed.
And I just want to remind folks that if you're in the chat, please put your questions in the Q&A. We are getting to as many as possible. We have over 400 questions open. Sharon has answered about 70 writing directly. And a lot of them are covering the same issue. So just because we don't read yours word for word, we're trying to address themes and trends here. I did see, though, a question about, you know, why use some of our budget for deep cleaning. And I just want to reiterate, and we don't have anyone from operations on the call, but maybe Dr. Presley can talk about the fact that we are, and I know that was in our presentation, that we are still looking at enhanced cleaning as well as our contract with Germ Blast. Dr. Presley, do you just want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, we started that last year where we really focused on just like we would in years past, pre-pandemic. If there's an episodic situation on a campus where there's some contagion or something, whether it's staph infection or whatever in an athletic department, that we go in and deep clean everything. So we have contracted with Germ Blast. So if there's we're doing that at all of our campuses. So we're taking more extensive precautions than we ever have to clean our campuses. Our custodial team throughout the district are troopers. They've worked through this entire pandemic and need to be acknowledged for that. And so, but if there's positive cases in a certain place or a certain building, then we will do additional cleaning there. But I think our cleaning has been enhanced through this whole process more than it ever has before. And just know that if we have a situation where there's a situation where more folks there are some positive cases, we will go in and clean it even more intensely. And I wish Terry Wooster was on the call, our chief operations officer, because he gives all the technical information about the chemicals used and all that kind of stuff. But we're very attentive to that, and our custodial team and our operations team are very, very responsive in those situations.
And we do have additional information about that in our COVID protocols. And we do have a question actually along those lines. Are the updated air filtration systems implemented in all schools or just some schools? Can you reconfirm? And I did check with Mr. Wooster earlier today so that we'd be able to answer that. And we do have upgraded filters on all of our campuses. We have the MERV filters, and then in every facility, they're flushing the system with outside air, which is a CDC recommendation 2 hours before school begins and throughout the school day. And I don't know if anyone else on this call, Dr. Aziz or Dr. Presley, has anything to add to that.
No, that's accurate. And also the filters on the buses also are changed more frequently. And also the buses are being disinfected daily. So we are doing a lot, as I said, to help, reduce the risk of a spread of the virus. Obviously, there's no, perfect, solution. We have to do a variety of things, and that's what we're trying to do in order for us to, again, to reduce the risk of spread. At the end of the day, we want our students and our staff to be safe as well, right? We have to work within those constraints and limitation, whether it's set but as I said, the governor or the TA or whatever. Obviously, we're not getting any funding, like you said earlier, Jenny, for virtual, but also we are hiring staff, right, to teach our students virtually, right? And because we want to make sure we're providing the support our students deserve, and we don't want them to fall behind, right? So we also are having conversation, to see if we can get some more money. I know conversation with other organizations, including the county, to see if we can get some more funding. But as I said earlier, I mean, I'm honestly, some folks want it all the way to K through 12, but we were able to plan for K through 6, hoping that our older students, they'll have the opportunity to. Obviously, it's up to our parents, right, whether choose to give them the vaccine or not, but at least they have that as an option. So that's why we focus mainly on K through 6, and even with that, as you probably know, I mean, there are very, very few school districts really in the state of Texas who are actually offering virtual. So I think, and we're not capping the numbers for K through 6, whereas other school districts may cap to 300, 400, 500 students. We actually, I think, I don't know if Mandy mentioned, we are up to 2,000 students, and we're still open. Now, do we want our students to be learning from virtually? I mean, if that's what our parents want, again, going back to parent choice, right? But really, ideally, we would like for our students to be back on site, and we want them to learn with each other, have access to all the opportunities available for them. But we understand also, that some of our parents may feel otherwise, and they may say safety first, which is, we respect that. And again, it's always going back to parent choice, right? And so we're trying, again, to work with our parents the best we can to accommodate them, and again, ensuring that they feel comfortable sending their best they got to learn from us and be with part of our school district. So, but again, we're listening, and I'm sure a team here took a lot of notes, and if there is any changes, we'll be able to communicate that to you. But we feel very strong about what our campuses and our principals and their staff will be trying to do to accommodate our students. And we feel very strong about our virtual option too. I think it's going to be very strong. But again, ultimately, we would like to have our students back. I would encourage our parents to also go and schedule a meeting and talk with the AP, the principal, the counselor at that campus. Ask them, I have a concern with this or that. What can we do? As I said, I feel like I know that our principals and their staff are amazing, and they will do everything they can to ensure that our students are back. I'm sure that everybody misses their students, including our teachers, and they would like to see them back in their classroom, back in the hallway, back in the gym, back in outside on the track and running and doing all the good stuff in the band. So I would encourage our parents really to try to, talk to our principals, talk to them, share their concerns or whatever. And again, try to kind of accommodate as much as possible. But again, please understand that we work within those constraints, and ultimately it's going to be a parent choice, right? Whether to wear a mask or not, or whether to send them in person versus virtual. Those we are trying to, again, work with our parents, because you are the parent, and we're trying to also respect your decision, and to the best we can, trying to accommodate your request, right? So again, I want to thank you. I know we still have some time, but I want to make sure to emphasize, please reach out to the campuses, reach out to and try to kind of figure out what else we can do to assist you. Our principals and our teachers and staff, they'd be more than glad to do that.
I have a question about fine arts. Will in-person band classes take place indoors or outdoors? I'm assuming that depends on many factors. Is that right, Dr. Presley?
Yeah, that's going to be a campus situation, a facility situation. So our band directors are included in all the protocols we're trying to implement and the safety measures we want to implement. So we're leaving it up to our staff to decide, social distancing. Does the choir go outside? Does the band go outside? We have obviously 5 amazing marching bands in Round Rock ISD that have been practicing for a couple weeks now, outside, but also inside and group rehearsals and things like that. So there's not a generic answer across the district for that. It's going to be up to the campuses and our directors, but they do know our protocols, and everyone's working to keep everybody as safe as possible.
Now, question about the same parent question about tag classes for virtual students. So Ryan or Mandy, perhaps this will be for either of you. For virtual classes, will there be different subject level tag classes for 6th graders, just like if they were going in person? Or will they be limited to participating in general classes and given one tag specialist that provides them services for all subjects?
I would say for 6th grade, we're definitely going to have tag math. So all levels of math will be available for students. So the Excel math, 6th grade math, and tag math. And I think we'll be looking at our numbers and be able to share more specifically with families after the 9th when we see all the students that have registered. But I'd say we'll be providing tag services, special ed services, DL services, all the services that you would expect to get on a general campus. And I'd say definitely 6th grade though, tag math would be the main kind of separate class that a student could expect that is in that program.
We also had several questions, and I know several of you have touched on this, but about students who are out for 10 days because they're positive or symptomatic or a close contact. Will they actually miss 10 days of school, or is it possible that they could be placed in virtual school during that time? And I know we've thought through that. Mandy, you look like you're reaching for your button.
Sure. We have seen that question coming up quite a bit. And here's the challenge with placing them in virtual school. So if they're out for 10 days, you're going to catch part of at least one weekend, if not maybe 2, depending on the 10-day period. So it really would not be an entire 10 days of school that they would be missing. So that's the first consideration. And then when you think about moving a child from an in-person teacher, changing them into a different classroom environment where the teacher doesn't know them in the virtual setting, nor do they know their classmates who are joining in virtually. A little bit of catch-up time probably to get used to the routines of that virtual class. We really don't think that would be the best option for students. And so while I certainly understand and appreciate parents' concern about perhaps missing 6 or 7 class days in that type of situation, we think that the juice is not worth the squeeze of moving them into a different classroom in a different class. And keep in mind, as we have said earlier, if this is a 6th grade student, it may very well be that their schedule does not match up with what we're offering in virtual anyway. What we are still brainstorming around and will continue to do is how to help our campuses serve those students who are going to be out for an extended period of time. And so we'll continue this team here on the call will continue to brainstorm around that, but we do think it's best for all students, especially for those who are having to step away for an extended period of time, to remain connected to their home campus and to their teacher that knows them well.
Yeah, I was just going to add that part about our teachers. Our teachers are great at staying connected with their students when they're out for absences for any period of time. I think that's something that happened, pre-pandemic as well. So I think we have a lot of systems in place that will help make that connection even better, as the students are essentially absent during that time and learning from home.
Another mask question. If a child's teacher chooses not to wear a mask, and as the district cannot require it, and it's been proven being vaccinated does not stop the spread of the virus, could a child in K through 6 request a classroom transfer to a teacher that is willing to wear one? The learning gap between virtual and in-person due to not being allowed electives is rather large, so families should have that option. So would we allow a transfer from a classroom change? What kind of goes into a request like that?
I would say no. I think if I'm understanding the question, it's if there's a teacher who wants to wear a mask, would we move a kid to that student's or that teacher's class? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
And the answer to that is no, because a teacher, just like a kid, could decide anytime, I'm not going to wear a mask anymore. So to accommodate that and to change their schedule entirely to move to another teacher, and then the teacher decides, I've gotten vaccinated or I'm not interested in wearing a mask anymore, or whatever it may be, I think that would make it even more complicated. So any request can always be done, right? But would a campus accommodate that? The answer is I don't think they probably would.
Okay. And I know we've talked a lot about the challenges of creating these opt-in mask classrooms, but we did say, it is a potential. And so people are wondering, if I'm interested in that, who do I let know? What's my option? So what's the best advice for people who want to see if it's a possibility? What should they do?
They need to reach out to their campus principal and talk to their principal about whether that's a possibility on their campus. There could be a principal that's trying to construct a mask classroom in a certain grade level, or a campus where that's not even a possibility. So the campus is always the best place to start.
Yeah, if I may say something to echo what Dr. Presley is saying, as a former principal, the expectation. I mean, if I was the principal, right, still, what I would do is if I have a group of my students who wants to opt in, and I have class, right, of students who are like that, I'll probably, I will also look for a teacher who probably would be wanting to mask up, right? But again, like Dr. Presley is saying, if the teacher next week changes his or her mind and said, I don't want to wear a mask anymore, now we have to kind of figure out, what is the plan B, right? But because we cannot force them to do it. And as we know, some folks may wear a mask today, may not wear it tomorrow, right? And vice versa. And so again, because we don't have any way of reinforcing it one way or another, we have to sometimes we'll have a challenging situation, right? But obviously, being a former principal, I probably will try to figure out as somebody already who will be willing to wear a mask if they're instructing students who all of them are wearing a mask. But again, I agree with Dr. Presley. I think these kind of things have to address at the campus level. And I know that our principals and their assistant principals will be more than happy to work with our parents.
Thank you, sir. Brandy, this one is for you. Given all the breakthrough cases of vaccinated people, why aren't vaccinated people being asked to quarantine if they are exposed? You want to talk a little bit about where we get that guidance for our quarantine and isolation protocols?
Right, we get that guidance from the CDC, and at this time, that's what the CDC states. There's the CDC has had to change some of their recommendations as we've gone through this pandemic. As they learn more, they change their guidance sometimes. And it's not to say that might not happen in this situation, but right now, the CDC's guidance is what was stated, that if you're fully vaccinated and if you've had COVID in the last 3 months, that you do not have to quarantine. So if that changes, then we will change that. I do understand that there is more transmissibility with this Delta variant, and that there are more people that are testing positive that are vaccinated. The good news is, from the folks that we know that this has happened to in our own district, they're not as ill. The symptoms aren't as severe. The vaccine does not guarantee anybody from not getting the virus, but it does it's supposed to help you keep your symptoms not being so severe. It keeps people out of the hospital and from, those near death severe symptoms. Anyway, we're waiting to see what the CDC says.
Okay. And obviously, if there's major changes to our protocol, we'll be communicating directly to parents and referring and letting them know that that's happened. Ryan, we have a question about what will the maximum class size for virtual classes be?
Yeah, so I think we talked a little bit about that before. So I think we do want to set the expectation that they'll be a little larger than you're probably used to on campus. I think we're working through the details at each grade level, looking at the numbers as they come in. But I'd say that they'll probably fluctuate. throughout the fall, as we do anticipate some kids, going back to campus, at kind of an inconsistent rate as they change their mind or maybe their plans change. They want to go back to campus. So we do anticipate some fluctuation. I wouldn't anticipate being much higher than 30. So that's kind of a target that we've set. But I do think that there'll be some range in that, especially as we get going. I just want to be honest with everybody that it is going to be a little larger than on campus, but not too large.
Here's one more about virtual. How are elementary schools handling classroom assignments for virtual students? Will school administrators make assignments and then just do without the kids who are going virtual? If they can come back in person at any time, how will elementary schools assign those kids who are coming back? So I guess that's about a continuity of learning if they come from virtual back to their home campus.
I think that's going to be one of the challenges that our principals are working through. It may not be possible in every case to hold. For example, if 5 students in a classroom of 22 have decided to go virtual and they've already been assigned to a class for this year, it may not be possible for that principal to hold those 5 spots open as other students enroll in the school and so forth. And so again, I think that's one of those case-by-case situations of the family working with the principal adjusting to changing fluid dynamics that we've mentioned several times on this call, and everyone doing the best they can to maintain continuity for that instructional environment. That said, I do anticipate, I think all of us, both staff and the folks who've joined us on the call tonight, understand and probably can appreciate that we are still in a very fluid environment, and we will adjust and do the best that we can by every student that we serve.
We have a question about hybrid options. What is needed for having a hybrid option? Evidently numbers are rising. It's high risk. I can't understand why we are sending the kids without online option. So it seems to me they're asking if we are hybrid, and sort of more like last year based at the campus, it's easier to move back and forth. Do you want to talk a little bit about the challenges and what we heard from our teachers about that hybrid model?
Yes, I can jump in on that. I think we heard challenges from both teachers and from our parents with that hybrid model. And it certainly is something that as a team, we did consider as an option. But the reality is that in a hybrid model such as that, both students in both learning environments probably don't get quite as good as what we could provide if the learning environment were the same for all the students served. So for us in working through and looking back at the pulse checks, the surveys that our families completed throughout the year last year, there were quite a few concerns from both the teachers and the families that we could probably do better than that. And so that is behind the decision to separate the two.
I'm piggybacking on that about what our virtual will look like. How much of virtual learning will be synchronous and how much will be asynchronous? Working parents need to plan accordingly.
Well, I'll say that it'll probably, the amount of time probably will look, like I said, if you're a virtual learner last year, it will look relatively similar. We're looking at some sample schedules right now that we're tweaking and working through. I think after August 9th, like I've said, once we get all the numbers of students that are going to enroll, we'll start communicating directly with those that have registered with some more of those specifics. I will say that one piece of the feedback kind of related to that I know we got from quite a few parents last year is that they felt like there was a little bit too much back and forth of synchronous at live time to asynchronous and back to live time, then back to asynchronous. So we are looking at ways this year to kind of chunk that synchronous time more. So like, for instance, this is just an example of like a kindergarten student might spend, 2 hours learning synchronously, or maybe 3 hours learning synchronously in the morning and then learning asynchronously after lunch or vice versa. But really trying to chunk that time together so it's more of a consistent experience. And that 3 hours, when I say that's not 3 straight hours of staring at the screen, but essentially 3 hours of interaction with your teacher, which could be back and forth. So like I said, more to come on that. But again, after the 9th, we'll start communicating more directly with those that have signed up.
this next question is interesting. It probably could have been asked pre-pandemic, but we certainly have seen a lot of use of screens that it was necessary during the pandemic. When will schools bring back textbooks to limit screen time? I bet all of you have an opinion on that, except for maybe Brandy, but all of the former teachers on the screen.
Well, we still have textbooks, we still have plenty of analog resources, source materials, a lot of great resources that I know our teachers are excited to be able to use again this year, as we do welcome, the vast majority of our students back in person. But I think there's always going to be a blend, of learning, with the screen and learning alongside the screen, but then also learning with our peers and with those resources. So I think our teachers, our students back on campus will definitely see a lot more like traditional books, tangible resources, things like that this year, definitely.
This question's been partially answered, but I think it kind of leads to some other topics. I'm going to ask it. My student will be in person, but if he does test positive and needs to quarantine, can I enroll him in virtual schooling for those 10 days? We want to answer that, but also open up a little bit about moving back and forth, what that might look like if it's possible between the virtual and in person.
Yeah, so that's a question that we discussed previously. So the student would stay enrolled at their home campus. Remember that our virtual students will not be enrolled at their home campus. They will be enrolled in our virtual program. And so to just go virtual would mean a change of a teacher. Now, it could be because our teachers are great when kids are out for an extended period of time, about checking in with parents, checking in with the student. So it may be that on the campus, there's an opportunity for a phone call or a Zoom meeting between the teacher and the parents, or the teacher and the student, to provide some support or assistance with completing that makeup work. Also keep in mind that our on-campus learners will have the same access to some of the learning programs that are online that our virtual students will be using. And so I would anticipate in a situation such as that, the teacher would provide some makeup work as well as some assignments within a computer-based program to help ensure that student doesn't miss a beat during that time that they're out.
But to be clear, if you're a virtual student, you could go back to in-person learning at any time. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jenny. Yes.
No, I mean both.
Yes.
I mean, you did answer part of the question. I just want to make sure we got the whole. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Question about for virtual students, is it just basic math, English, reading, etc.? How about specials?
So again, we're working through the details on specials. This, for those of you that don't know, specials are in the elementary world, that'd be your electives, kind of art, music, PE. So we're working with that department on how that will look, but students will be receiving specials. Kind of how it looks on a day-to-day basis, we're still working through. But really the virtual experience is going to be pretty similar to on campus, as far as they'll have their literacy time, math time, science, social studies, as well as specials and PE throughout the week.
Here's a question about teacher assignments regarding elementary cohorts. When will we be announcing teacher assignments? Can we talk a little bit about timing for that?
And is that for the virtual students, I'm assuming?
I think it's maybe both.
Okay, so for the in-person students, teacher assignments are announced by the campus. And so I would advise parents, if your student will be an in-person learner, that will be information that your campus will send out. For our virtual students, we anticipate that will be at the beginning, near the beginning of school. And again, fluid situation. We know that we're going to spend the first few days of school getting students oriented, getting them logged into the systems, accustomed to working in a virtual environment, because we're going to assume that students who join us in the virtual program haven't done that before, so that we can get everyone on track with logging into the systems that they'll need to use and practicing with that. And we'll also introduce them to their peers and have some SEL type of activities for them as a group. So I would anticipate that for sure by the end of that Friday, the first week of school, school begins on a Wednesday. And so for sure, by the end of that first 3 days, they'll have their teacher assignment, and possibly well before then.
Yeah, if I can just a little bit more about those 3 days. So there's definitely be a strong kind of orientation feel to it. There will be learning going on those days with our SEL team, as well as our technology specialists working and getting to know the students and the families really to help with that transition. But there will be synchronous time each of those 3 days, as well as asynchronous time on the 18th, 19th, and 20th.
There's a question, seems to note a little confusion about that August 9th deadline, which is when that form closes. We initially said after that, after school starts, requests will go through the home campus. Dr. Ozias, do you want to talk a little bit about our numbers and where we are now? And so that August 9th deadline.
Yeah, so we thank you. So we are a little over 2,000 students who wanted to enroll in virtual. To be honest with you, when we first put this plan together, we didn't know how many students we would have, obviously, right? We did not put a cap, and we're not putting a cap, but for planning purposes and preparation purposes, we need to kind of put like a due date to this, right? So we're hoping by August 9, that would give enough time for our parents to sign up for virtual if they want to have virtual option, but will allow us also as a district to turn around and making sure that not only the staff, we're hiring the staff, right, adequately staffing for virtual, but also ensuring that the students are scheduled in the system, and that we have everything ready for them based on the grade level and whatever need they might have, right? So we need to find out, for example, the number of students who are in bilingual education that may need bilingual certified teachers, and so we can schedule them accordingly, right? Whether other extra services that need to be provided for our gifted and talented students, right, or special needs students. So all that needs to figure out, and we'll probably after August 9, we'll have literally 1 week to turn things around and making sure that we have everything ready for our students who are wanting to have a virtual option. So that's why, again, we have to kind of put like a due date to this for planning and preparation purposes, so we can again have everything ready for our virtual learners as well as for in-person learners.
Here's a kudos and a question from a parent. Thanks for updating the HVAC systems and ventilation. Can teachers open or encourage to open windows to help improve ventilation in the classrooms? Dr. Presley, I'm going to pitch that one to you.
Yeah, our teachers can use that strategy, but many of our classrooms don't have windows that open, so it's a matter, once again, of a specific facility and what's available and what's not. So we have amazing teachers and campus leaders in our district, and I think they'll make the best decisions on what are the best methods to use to bring fresh air in, along with our filtration systems. But like I said, we have some schools that have windows that open and some schools that don't. So there's no cookie cutter answer to that across the district with as many campuses as we have. But I know that all of our teachers love their kids and they want safety to be the priority, as well as our leadership teams in our campuses. So they'll accommodate accordingly.
Thank you. This question is, can we get a confirmation email before August 9th that verify we successfully signed up our kids for virtual? Ryan, Mandy, how will parents be, notified that they are in fact in virtual?
Well, I did hear that there was not a confirmation email that was automated when it was submitted. So I answered a question in the Q&A earlier that if you applied, like Dr. Azai said, we don't have a cap. So everybody that applied is getting in, essentially, if that's one way to think about it. I think after August 9th, we'll have to think through with that large number how we can communicate right back out to confirm. But I don't think we're in a position right now to be able to send a verifying email or anything like that. It's something we can definitely explore. I can look into that with our technology team, but we'll have to look into that.
But essentially, if they filled out that form by August 9th, they are in virtual.
Correct.
And next steps would be contacted by their assigned teacher?
Yeah, so we'll start communicating. No, we'll start communicating centrally with information about what kind of the plan is going to look like with more details after the 9th. But we'll do that directly with those that have signed up. So that's kind of the next step of when they'll hear from us.
This question is, when my child gets the vaccine, will they be able to return immediately? Are the classes at the same speed, or will there be some type of catch-up process to get back into school?
Yeah, I can jump on that one too. So our virtual learning program will definitely be following the same aligned Round Rock curriculum. So our intention is there won't need to be any gap time or catch-up time or anything like that for a student that goes from virtual back to their home campus. So it should be a seamless educational switch from one to the other. That's the intention.
Yeah, I just want to echo what obviously Ryan was talking about. Our virtual options follow the same curriculum, same TEKS that we're supposed to cover by the state of Texas. So would be a robust option. But we would, again, can I emphasize, whatever our parents feel comfortable sending their students to school, that's really what we want. We want them back as soon as possible. So is their teachers who are their zone campuses, right? And their principals and everybody there. So whatever our parents feel comfortable, obviously we would like for them to come back. And the reason we're doing this virtual option is because we don't want our students to fall behind. And so when they're ready to go back, they're ready to go back and be, if anything, at the same level as their classmates. Again, we're hoping that whether if our parents decide to give their kids the vaccine and send them back, the sooner the better. As I said, we welcome them whenever you're ready to send them back.
I just want to thank our parents that joined us for all your questions, and please know that we'll use these questions to inform a more robust FAQ, as well as we're still making decisions. I believe at last count, we're one of 3, maybe 4 districts in the entire state. Keep in mind, there are over 1,100 school districts in Texas that are attempting to offer a virtual option. It is very challenging. Again, just to reiterate, we are funded based on our attendance. And so if we have 3,000 students in virtual, that's 3,000 students we aren't getting funding for, but we are educating them. And so there are a lot of things to work out. And I can assure you this team is working very hard, and student safety is at the very top of the priority list. So we'll continue to field these questions, and again, fill out our FAQ and work out these logistics. And I just want to make sure that Dr. Aziz, you have just the last couple of minutes to deliver any messages you'd like to our parents who are watching.
Well, first of all, I want to thank them one more time for really connecting with us this evening. And I know, again, we tried to get all the answers for their questions. I know probably missed few, and I know by the time we leave, probably our parents will have even more questions to ask, right? And they have every right to do so, right? You're the parent, and you want to make sure that your child is not only getting the best education possible in our district, but also they're safe, right? So totally understand, and I want to thank you for partnering with us and really sharing your child with us. I want you to know none of us want your child to get sick or not to be safe, but we understand. We want to we hope you understand that also there's again limitations and certain constraints that put forward that we have to function within those, right? But again, we thank you for your partnership. Our teachers and our staff are eager to see our students back in their classrooms and their hallways and their gyms and band hall and all that good stuff. But we also understand that you may decide, to keep your child virtually for some time, maybe until you feel more comfortable or you get the child vaccinated. But I want to assure you that, we will be there for you. We'll be there for your kid and ensure again that they're receiving the best education. But we are waiting, and we will be waiting for them, and we welcome them back the minute you decide to send them. Otherwise, you're the parent, you make those decisions. We're not here to be the parent of your child. We're here to be your partner, to educate your kids and help them, again, be safe and successful academically. So thank you for everything you do for our district, for our students.
So we'll keep communicating via direct email. Please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and stay tuned to our website for updates. But it is an ever-changing situation. So again, we appreciate your support and patience as we all work through this. Thanks for joining us tonight. And this video will be available on our website.